Hey guys, and welcome to a new series I'm going to be starting. It's going to be a crafting system, and I'm going to be starting this using the inventory system that I have a series for, if you want to check that out. But you should be able to follow along without the inventory system as well, as we're just going to be using the actual backpack system, like the actual backpack right here where all the tools are stored. So it should be able to work without the inventory system, but it may be easier with the inventory system. Anyway, in this first episode, we're going to get started on the UI for the crafting system. So if we go over here to start a GUI, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this open button right here for the inventory a little bit, just to give a little bit more room for that crafting button. Remove this aspect ratio constraint, make it a little bit shorter, a little bit wider maybe. Okay. Then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this inventory. I'm going to do Control D to do that. I'm going to rename this to crafting. Actually, I'll make this from start just to show you how the process works. So with this inventory system that we have this main frame, and it's going to have like all the items in it, right? Or it does have all the items in it. It's where all the items show up. We're going to do the same sort of thing in the crafting system. So we're going to create two frames here. We're going to do one on the left side for the actual table, the crafting table, kind of like in Minecraft or something, right? And one on the right side for the display of all the items that you have. And with the actual crafting system itself, it's going to be pretty similar to how Minecraft works. A little bit different in how it's set up probably, but similar in how the recipes work. Mostly because I figured that covers the most amount of cases that people would want to make a crafting system for. But I'll explain that more as we get into that. So we're going to make one frame. We're going to call this one crafting. And so we're going to change the size a little bit. Make sure it's in scale. So using these first numbers rather than the second numbers. So that way you're scaling it based off of a proportion of the screen rather than a set pixel amount. Okay. And then UI corner. I'm going to change this to 0.2 so it's maybe something else. Ooh, not that. Just so it's also scale. We're going to change the color. We're going to style it the same way as the inventory system just because it's quick and easy to make. You can style the UI however you want as long as you have it set up to where it'll work the same way. Let's see. And then I'm going to add a little UI stroke just kind of for fun, a little outline around the edges. Probably just leave it as is. Okay, so this is going to be the crafting side. I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to drag it over here. This will be the inventory side. Okay, so then we're going to name this one inventory. Then for the crafting side, we're going to create a text label. We're going to call it title. And then we're going to set background transparency to 1. We're going to set the anchor point to 0.5, 0.5. Position 0.50. So that'll put it right at the top middle. You can position it differently if you want to, but that's how I want to do mine. And the size, something like that, maybe. Okay, we're going to go down here to the text properties. We're going to do text scaled. And we're going to do the font as Fredoka 1, color as maybe like a teal sort of color. I'm going to add an outline probably. Text stroke transparency to 0, so it's just a little bit easier to read. We call this crafting. Alright, so that'll be our label for that. And then we can copy this over here and then call it inventory, or change the text to inventory. Change the color just to match what the actual inventory looks like. Right here you can see just to match those colors, because why not? So we have those two frames, we have the titles for those frames. So the inventory setup, let's start with that. So just like in the inventory system, we're going to want a scrolling frame because we want to be able to have a lot of items and be able to scroll if there's like more than what fits on the screen, right? So let's see. We're going to change the anchor point to 0.5, position, so it's right in the middle, 0.5, and I'll play around with the size a little bit. Maybe move it so it's not quite right in the middle. Nonetheless. Okay, that looks pretty good on the size, I think. I'm going to rename this to items scroll. We're going to change the color to 75 all around, just a little bit lighter, kind of pops out a little bit. And then there's a few properties we're going to want to change. Okay, so down here in the scrolling properties, change the canvas size to 0, change the, automatic canvas size to Y. That'll make so it automatically scales. So the canvas size is basically how much scrolling space you have. The automatic canvas size property, if you set it to Y, that means on the Y axis, so up and down, then it'll automatically scale the canvas size based on how many items are in the scrolling frame. So that makes so it just works nicely. Like as you get more items, it'll increase the amount of scrolling space there is. Let's see. But if you don't turn this to 0, then this doesn't really work very well. And we're going to go down here, vertical scroll bar inset. We're going to change this to scroll bar. So anytime there's a scroll bar here, it's going to like inset everything to the left a little bit, just to like, so the scroll bar doesn't cover anything under it. It'll just push everything to the left a little bit. So that's usually pretty nice to have. And then let's see, I think that's pretty much it for that. I might move this out a little bit. I'm going to leave that kind of extra space over here on this side, because we're going to add a little result frame right here that'll show, like, as you're putting things in the crafting table, it'll show what recipe is currently being matched, like right here. But so we're going to leave a little bit of empty space right there. But let's see. So in the item scrolling frame, we're going to want to add a UI grid layout, and then we're going to want to add a sample like item, or it's going to be a stack. I guess it depends on how you set it up, but like if you don't have the inventory system. But if you do have the inventory system, then you're probably going to want to do it with stacking. So call this sample. Make a text button, call it sample. I'm gonna, let's see, so the UI grid layout sets the size to be 100, 100, and we're gonna leave that as is, I think. We might have a script adjust that. I don't remember if I did that or not, but we'll see. But for now, leave that as is. For the button, we're gonna say, we're gonna get rid of the text. We're gonna change the background color to be just a little bit brighter. Add a UI corner. Use a fraction, or use a decimal instead of using the offset. Use the scale, so that way it's the same for all screens and whatnot. So then inside this sample, let's see, we're gonna want a UI stroke just for fanciness. We're gonna change this from contextual to border, because right now it's trying to do it around the text, but there's no text because it's a text button. So normally it would have text, but in this case we're just using it for it to be a button, right? Let's see. So UI stroke, UI aspect ratio constraint. It's not really necessary, I guess. I'm gonna leave that one out. Image label. I'm gonna rename it. I'm just gonna leave it as image label. I'm gonna change background transparency to 1. And remove the default image texture. And then, let's see, and then the size, right? Change the size to 1,1. So it just scales the full 100% of the sample frame. And then I think that's everything for this sample. So this, if we duplicate this a bunch of times, it'll kind of like stack in like a grid formation. As you can see, the scroll bar increases as you have more of them. And then you can kind of adjust these properties. So like the cell padding, make them spaced out a little bit more. Make them smaller. Another thing is that these work best with offset. So like if you use scale, it doesn't really work very well because then it makes them on square. And then even if you add like the UI aspect ratio constraint and set this to 1, so it's always a square, then it just makes the spacing really weird. So the only nice way I've found to set these up is to like just use offset. And then if you want, because the issue then with using offset is that if you want to go over here to test device, if you look at different screen sizes, then depending on the type of device, it's going to be a lot different, right? Because it's a pixel size. So on a bigger screen, the items are going to look a lot smaller. which is kind of an issue at times. So one thing I like to do is simply use a script to automatically update the cell size based on the screen size. I don't remember if I did that because I built this system in advance. I don't know if I did that or not, but either way. So we have that set up. So that's pretty much the inventory side of things done, except for one thing, I guess. I forgot. We're going to want an item count or text label. We're going to call this item count. We're going to set anchor point to be 0.5, 1. Position 0.5, 1. So it's the bottom middle. Background transparency to 1. Size 1, 0.2 maybe. 0.3 maybe. The font to Frioka 1. Text. We'll just put like a sample text for now. So this is going to show you how many items you have in that stack. We're going to add a little outline to it. I think that's pretty good. Okay. Now we're done with this inventory side. So now we're going to go to this crafting side, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. But it shouldn't be too bad to set up the UI itself. So on the crafting side, we're going to minimize this. Crafting. We're going to create a new frame, and we're going to call it table. And then this, we're going to set the color to be 75, just kind of match the colors here. And then set anchor point, position it right in the middle. Oh, let's that. There we go. Oopsies. Okay, there we go. So this one, we want to set this to be a square. So we have the UI aspect ratio constraint. We're going to move it up a little bit. Maybe we're going to line it up with this. And then one thing, let's see. First, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll just make this a little bit smaller. Well, let's see. So position, we'll make sure this is in the middle. This one doesn't need it. The y-axis doesn't need to be in the middle, because we want it to be up a little bit, actually. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. So it has a little bit more space in the bottom. I'm also going to change the anchor point a little bit. I'm going to change the y-axis anchor point to 0, and then change the position to be back where I want it to be. Now if I scale it, it changes where it scales from. Okay, and we want to make sure we have room for a couple buttons down here. I think that should be good like that. Then in here, I'm going to add a UI corner, just like before. Kind of adjust it till it looks about how I want it. So this is going to be the next fun part. So we're going to want to set up all we're going to do like a 3x3 grid right here. But instead of using a UI grid layout, we're going to set this up with a UI table layout, which is kind of an interesting thing. So we're going to add a frame. We're going to make the frame, let's see, padding, fill empty space columns, fill empty space rows. So then we're going to add padding as well. There we go. Okay. So this is how it should look. So if you have the UI table layout, you have both of these checked. Then you set a little bit of padding, and when you add the 3 frames, it'll just automatically kind of fill them in, which is kind of cool. So that this does the rows. So each of these frames is 1 row, right? I'm going to change the padding a little bit to be scale. So I'm going to do 0.05 for both X and Y. And then, so now the UI table layout's set up. So then each of these frames is going to be a row. We're going to ignore the bottom 2 for now, I think. Make them all invisible. Go to the top one. I'm going to rename this R1 for row 1. And then I'm going to add a text button. And then for this text button, let's see. So I want to do size. I don't think it's going to modify the size. Okay, so if you duplicate it, it's going to be a little bit glitchy. I don't remember how I fixed this though. But it's kind of a little bit wonky sometimes. There we go. So if I get rid of it, if I copy these, paste it into all of them, you can see it doesn't always get the scaling right, but I think if you delete the UI table layout and place it again, it'll reset it all and get the scaling right. So I'm gonna delete these for now. I'm gonna name this one column 1, column 2, column 3. And then row 1, I'm gonna set the layout order to 1, and then this one, I'm just going to configure one of these first, and then I'm going to duplicate it, so I might delete these 2 for now. So let's see. So this one, we want to have a color of 150. We want this is essentially going to be an item frame, right? So it's going to be the same sort of thing as right here. We may even be able to copy that actually. If we go down here, we copy this sample, paste it in here, we rename that to, oops, C1. Okay, and then the other thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the item count, because I didn't set up the system to work with like having multiple items in the same slot in a crafting table. This is going to be, you'll see, but yeah, so you won't be able to, like in Minecraft, you can take like a stack of logs, you can put it in the whole stack in the crafting table, and do the recipe a million times. You won't necessarily be able to do that with this system, because I didn't quite set it up that way. You'd have to change some things for it to work like that. But anyway, so this is our column 1. I think that's pretty much set up how we want it. So then if we duplicate this a couple times, column 2, column 3, as you can see the skeleton's not right, but we're not going to worry about that for now. So we have these, so we're going to want to set these layout orders to match the order that we want the columns to appear in. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3. And it looks like that updated the UI table layout as well, which is interesting. But anyway, so now we have row 1 completed, so we can duplicate that 2 times. We have row 2, row 3. And we want to do the same thing here with the layout order, just to make sure it's all in the right order. Now I think we have it all set up. So we have row 1, row 2, row 3. Each one has a column. And I guess just to summarize how this UI table layout works, so I didn't fully explain it earlier. Basically, if we look at the UI table layout's parent, everything inside of that is put into rows, and everything inside of those rows is put into columns. So that's what's going on here. And that's why it's like automatically laying out like this. And it's set to fill in the space because of these 2 properties. So that's really useful. Then another thing we're going to do, we're going to add a UI padding to this table, and maybe do like oh, okay. I guess it's just glitching out a little bit. There we go. 0.05 looks pretty good. Just give a little space around the edges. And that's pretty much going to be the crafting thing, other than when you add 2 buttons here, one for crafting, for like confirming and actually creating the item, and then another one for clearing, so get rid of everything on the table. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Oh, never mind, I'll leave it there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do is, so outside of this table thing, we're going to create a new text button. This one we're going to call craft. We're going to do background color, we're going to set this one to green. Transparency, we're going to leave that alone. Size, I'm just going to set it to be scale. I'm going to drag it around and then kind of scale it where I want it, roughly right there. We're going to add a UI corner. We're going to go down to the text properties, vertical 1, set the text to white, crafting, and then text scaled, and then add a outline. Okay, and I'm also going to add a UI stroke, so that way I can add an outline around the border as well. Change this to border, you do that. And then a UI padding, so that way the text isn't quite right around the edges like that. Maybe even 0.1. There we go. It gives a little bit more space around the edges. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this, drag it over here, the other side, make sure they're kind of lined up how I want them to be. Okay, and then this one I'm going to change this and call it clear. I'm going to go down, rename this, and then go up here, change the color, there we go. So now we have a crafting button, or I put the text wrong. That's supposed to just be craft, and clear. Cool. And we'll set those up in the script as well. Okay, so we have these 2 parts, and then the last thing we need to do, actually there's 2 more things. First of all, we need a crafting button, so I'm going to go over here. I guess I'll just create it manually just to show you how it works, but it's going to be pretty much the same sort of thing as with these buttons. So I'm going to do create a text button. Let's see what's in here. So this has the UI corner, so I'm going to add the UI corner. That's corner radius. Okay, so it's just full all the way to 1. UI padding of 0.15. Just going to paste that in there. UI stroke as the border, thickness 1, color black. So this should look roughly the same, as you can see over here, and then we just need to change the color. What color is that? Let's see. I can use the screen picker. So yeah, so it's 50, 50, 50. Size, we want the size to be the same as this one. And then go down to the text, all the same usual stuff. And we're going to call this one crafting. Text scaled. Add a little bit of an outline. And we're going to move it down. And then I think that's pretty much it for the button. Yeah, let me double check that everything looks good on different device sizes. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so then we have the crafting button, we have the back button. I'm going to change this and name this to open, same way as how it is in the inventory system. I'm just going to minimize that now. Okay, then now the one last thing for the UI that we need is the result frame right here. So let's see. I'm going to go create a new frame right here. Actually, I'm going to go inside the crafting. I'm going to create a new frame. I'm actually going to duplicate, let's see. Now I'll just create a new frame. So create a new frame, call it result. I'm going to do anchor point of 1.5. So it's going to be on the right middle. Do the position, the Y position, do 0.5. The X position, you can kind of scale it around. I'm going to change the size. So it's like, there we go. Okay, roughly kind of a square-ish shape. It doesn't need to be a perfect square. And then just reset the Y position to be in the middle again. And then same sort of thing, UI corner. Adjust that how we want it. Change the color. Let's see, might do a little bit more on the UI corner. Let's see, change the, what else do I need to change? I think that's it for this outer frame. So now we need to add the title. So I'm going to copy this and just paste it in here. It'll kind of automatically place it roughly where we want it. I'm going to call this result. I'm going to leave the color the same. I'm going to make the text a little bit taller. So that way it scales a little bit bigger. Like that. There we go. And then, let's see, we're going to add then we need to have a frame right here to display the item itself. But just kind of keep the colors consistent. I'm going to add an outer frame as well as an inner frame. So I'm going to call this item container. This is going to be, we're going to add a UI aspect ratio constraint to make it square. Add a UI corner to add a little bit of rounding around the edges. Okay, then the color, 75 I think, is what this is. And then place it pretty much right in the middle, maybe not quite a mess. The anchor point is 0.5, 0. And then position 0.5, like 0.2 maybe. That seems about right. Because we also need room for text right here at the bottom. So I'm going to duplicate this title and call this item name. I'm going to do right here, I'm going to do 0.5, 1. Position, I'm going to do 0.5, maybe. We'll change the color of the text to be white. Make it a little bit shorter. And scale this down. If you hold shift and drag this, it'll scale the whole thing like that. That's what I'm doing there. I'm going to change this text to just say none. And that's going to be the default text when you don't have an item, when you don't have a valid crafting recipe in place. Let's see. I'm going to scale this in a little bit. Okay, so then inside this item container, we're going to kind of snatch the same thing we have going on here, paste it inside of that. We're going to rename this to be, actually no, we don't need to have all this. We can just add the image label, because all we need is the image itself. And then we can, let's see, I'm going to put anchor point 0.5, size, or not size, position 0.5, size about 0.8 maybe. We're going to add the background back. So background transparency to 0. Set this to 150. So we're going to essentially stylize it like this with just the image label. And rename the image label to, actually I'm going to leave that one as is. Yeah, okay. I'm going to add a UI corner. There we go. Okay, and then add a UI stroke as well. Add a little outline just like the other ones have. What else do we need here? Yeah, it might be everything for that. Yeah, okay. So I think that's the entire UI setup. So how we're going to set this up, just to kind of give a little preview for the rest of the videos. This is going to be the end of this video, but how we're going to set it up is we're going to have this inventory update based on the items in your backpack. If you're using the inventory system, I'm going to show you a way to do it just, using what the inventory system already has. But if you're not, I'm going to show you another way to do it as well. But we're going to be able to just drag items from here over to the crafting slots, and it's going to like place them in there. It's going to like show that the image for that item right there. It's not going to necessarily move the item itself, but you're going to be able to essentially place them in each slot. You can click them to get rid of them, then you can press craft if there's a valid recipe to actually craft that item. But anyway, so I'm going to end this episode here. Hope you enjoyed. I'm looking forward to setting up the rest of this series. This was a fun system to make, so I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys next time.